The rain had stopped, but the streets of Seoul still glistened under the dim glow of streetlights. Inside the Grand Kong mansion, the night was quiet, except for the sound of footsteps echoing through the long marble hallways. In a small room near the back of the mansion, Han Mairi sat on her bed, staring at the ceiling. She had been working here for over a year, cleaning, serving, and staying invisible. She never spoke unless spoken to. That was the rule. But tonight, something felt different. The air was heavy with tension. The house was preparing for the return of Kong Ji-hyun, the only son of Chairman Kong. He had been away for years, living in Australia. The staff whispered about him in hushed voices. Some said he was arrogant. Others said he was troubled. But one thing was clear. Now that he was back, nothing would be the same. The arrival. The black car rolled through the gates of the mansion, its tires silent against the wet pavement. Mairi stood at the corner of the hall, watching from a distance. When the door opened, she caught her first glimpse of him. Kong Ji-hyun stepped out, dressed in all black, his sharp eyes scanning the house like a stranger in his own home. His features were striking, cold yet unreadable. He didn't look tired from the long flight. He didn't look happy either. The maids bowed as he walked past them without a word. Mairi turned quickly, pretending to be busy. But as she adjusted the curtains in the hallway, she felt it, the weight of his gaze. For a split second, their eyes met. Her breath caught in her throat. His stare wasn't cruel, but it wasn't kind either. It was the look of a man studying something unfamiliar. Before she could react, he walked away, leaving her heart pounding. She told herself it meant nothing. He would never notice someone like her. She was wrong. The first encounter. That night, Mairi couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, feeling uneasy. Something about him made her nervous, not in fear, but in a way she couldn't explain. Unable to rest, she slipped out of her room and went to the library. The mansion's library was her secret place. She loved the smell of old books, the silence, the feeling that, for a little while, she could be someone else. But as she stepped inside, she froze. He was already there. Ji-hyun sat in the dim light, leaning back in a chair, his fingers tapping against the wooden table. He wasn't reading. He was just staring into the darkness. Mairi knew she should leave, but before she could turn around, his voice stopped her. "You like books?" His tone was calm but firm. She swallowed hard before nodding. "Yes, sir." A small smirk appeared on his lips. "You don't have to call me that." Mairi wasn't sure how to answer. No one had ever told her that before. "You always come here?" he asked, tilting his head. She hesitated. "Only when I can't sleep." He hummed in response, looking at her as if trying to read her thoughts. Then, to her surprise, he leaned forward. "Then stay," he said simply. Mairi stood still, unsure what to do. But something in his voice made it clear. He wasn't asking. She sat across from him, her fingers gripping the edges of her book. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The only sound in the room was the soft crackling of the fireplace. Mairi didn't know what was happening, but one thing was certain. She had stepped into something dangerous. And she wasn't sure she could escape. The secret that changed everything. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed more often. It started with small conversations, simple questions, casual remarks. But soon it became something else. Ji-hyun was different when he was alone. He wasn't as cold, and sometimes he even smiled. He asked her about her life, her dreams, and though she tried to hold back, she found herself answering. But there was something about him that didn't make sense. Some nights, he would disappear. Other nights, he looked restless, his hands trembling slightly, as if fighting something inside him. Then one evening, Mairi found out the truth. The storm outside had knocked out the mansion's power. The hallways were dark, and the air was filled with the sound of rain hitting the windows. Mairi was carrying a candle when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned, and there he was. His eyes were different that night. Darker, wilder. "Mairi," he said her name like a warning. She gripped the candle tighter. "Are you okay?" Ji-hyun didn't answer. He stepped closer, his breath uneven. She could feel the heat from his body, the intensity in his stare. "You should go," he whispered, but she didn't move. His hand brushed against her arm, and a shiver ran through her. There was something in the way he looked at her, like he was struggling with himself, like he was about to lose control. Myri realized then what the staff had been whispering about. Ji-hyun was fighting something inside him. A hunger, a need. And she had walked straight into it. To be continued. Fire, what happens next? Will Myri escape, or is she already trapped in something she never expected? Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode.